Can you explain what you liked about Klint Kubiak and kind of specifically try to identify, I mean, that's such a widespread system that's now half the different offenses in the league vote, but what part of it you feel like it'll be the Saints version of it?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I would say this, initially I'd say I've kind of followed the Kubiak family. Gary played at Texas A&M, so hell, I grew up watching him play football. He was coaching at A&M when I was playing. Klint was probably running around out on the field at that time. And so I've kind of followed that family. I followed that system of football. I've been against that system of football. And I think it's really difficult to defend. And so that was kind of the initial thought that drew me to Klint and that system. And just getting an opportunity to visit with him and then doing my background research and people that I've talked to that have worked with him or he's worked for. This guy he's highly intelligent. He's creative. And he's a grinder. He's gonna work to find the answers and the solutions. And so I'm excited about what I think he can bring to our organization.
What can you say about where you guys stand with Marshon Lattimore? I know his contract got tinkered with. I mean,
yeah,
have there been talks with him about staying together? Possible trade?
Lattimore's on our football team. He's a good football player. He's been a good football player for us. And so, obviously there's a lot of things that happen, throughout the offseason, but Lat's a big part of our team right now.
In talking to Klint, who has he said he's excited to work with on this offense?
Well, look, I think, the interesting thing is when a new group comes in, they kind of look at your team and they look at it from a positive perspective. And so the exciting thing was, I think the offensive staff as a whole was really excited about working with a lot of the pieces to the puzzle that we have on offense. And so, look, I think that brings an excitement to me in terms of what I think we can do offensively.
How big a part is getting the run game back going and getting this offense to where you want it to be?
Well, look, I think we threw the ball fairly decently last year. And so I think where we weren't as good is being able to run the football. And I think that's an important piece to playing good, productive offense. I think that helps the quarterback out when you're able to run the football and all of a sudden you come off a heavy run fake and you're able to throw a play-action pass and create some explosive plays down the field. So I've always felt like that's important in being a balanced offense, being able to run the football and then being able to throw it when you need to.
The Kubiak name kind of has some weight to it when you're talking about like NFL rushing attacks too.
Yeah, well, look, it was amazing when I first started the whole process, and Klint was a guy that I was interested in. I really didn't go to Klint's stats. I went to Gary's stats, and I looked at all the top offenses that he's been a part of. So I kind of started there, and then you go and you start, following Klint and what he's been able to accomplish and who he's been around and who he's been with. And you get excited about the vision of where we think this thing can go.
Did you see Gary was interested in having, even not for the coordinator position, just a role on staff? We see Brian and Bill Callahan work together. Is that something that Klint expressed interest in?
Yeah, look, I think Gary's comfortable, living the retired life, and yet I think, there may be some things that we can lean on him for. Obviously he'll. I hired his son, so he's going to be around to help out if we need it.
You obviously didn't make many changes to the defensive staff then. The one element, you guys changed a lot of personnel on the defensive line last year. You brought in your defensive line coach. I mean, why didn't you get the run defense where you wanted it to be, and how far off do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's as far off as many might think. Obviously, look, we played really good run defense for a long period of time, and so obviously anytime there's a drop off in that area, it's a little bit of a cause for concern. But I feel good about where we're going to be, in terms of being able to stop the run. And ultimately, look, ultimately the job of the defense is to A, get the ball back for the offense, which I felt like we did a pretty good job of taking the ball away, and B, eliminate points. And I feel like we did a pretty good job of doing that also. So although I think we need to improve in the run game, I think there's some things that we need to be better there. I think we need to improve in terms of our ability to rush the passer. And I don't think that we played as well as I think we're capable of defensively. And yet I still think we were productive.
Did you feel that the loss of Malcolm Roach to injury during the season had an impact on that sort of downward turn?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, look, I think Malcolm's one of those players that, he's got some hidden production, and not just hidden production, but there's also an element of the type of leader that he is. He brings an enthusiasm, to the defense. And yeah, I think when you lose a player like that, particularly at a position like that, defensive line, and in particular inside at defensive tackle, those guys are hard to replace.
Can you speak to how important this offseason is for Penning, just considering it's his first offseason where he really gets to work on technique?
Yeah, look, I think it's huge. I think, look, here's the good news. The good news is that, he's coming in with a clean slate. He's coming in healthy. So he's going to have an opportunity to go through a full offseason program, both from a lifting perspective and from a practice perspective. And I think those are two critical things when you're talking about, still a young guy. I know this is going into his third year, but he missed basically his whole rookie season. And then last year, he missed all the offseason program before, being put in as a starting left tackle. So I think this is going to be an important offseason for him. And I think being able to start on a clean slate with a lot of new eyes on you, I think will be beneficial for him.
Speaking of health, how's Ryan Ramczyk doing?
Yeah, look, I think Ryan's getting better. He's obviously, he's got a knee that he and we are going to have to manage. But we feel much better about where he's at today than where he was maybe, a month and a half ago.
Dennis, we've seen like a handful of head coaches start to not come to this event, and smaller stats here. Why is it important for you guys to kind of show them?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing for me is being able to, I've seen some of the tape on these guys, not to the extent that I want to, but I think the biggest thing is kind of being able to put, a face to the film, and really get a chance to, kind of begin the evaluation process, not from a physical athletic standpoint as much, more so from the type of person that he is, how well does the kid learn, what are the things that are important to him, where does he see himself in terms of his development. So I still feel like this is an important part of the evaluation process.
Is some of the athletic stuff, does that become obsolete at all with the tracking and some of the different data you guys can get?
No, look, I don't believe it's obsolete. I mean, I think there's still some things that you can gather from this. I think this is look, it's one thing when you're watching a guy on tape and on film, and then all of a sudden you see him live. It's like going to a live game. It just looks different, and you get a better feel for what it actually is rather than just, watching it on a TV screen.
I know obviously a lot was made about Jameis at the end of the season. Were you able to share a little bit about kind of where things stand with him going into the offseason?
Yeah, look, I think Jameis is still under contract as we sit here right now, and there's a lot of things that happen throughout the off-season program. We'll see how those things play out. But as we sit, and look, I know Jameis has said, I want to go and be a starter, and obviously that's something that he aspires to do, and we'll see how things play out.
You mentioned Ramczyk. How did the team come out of the season health-wise overall? I guess there's probably always a few surprises about surgeries and things like that.
Yeah, there was nothing after the season that came up of any significance where we were having, major surgeries that we didn't know were going to take place. I'd say we probably had, a handful of surgeries that that guys had that we kind of knew, was coming, and so, we'll manage that. I don't think, other than probably Nephi, I don't know that we have anybody that I expect to not be ready for training camp. There's going to be some guys that would be, minimal to limited throughout, the off-season program, OTAs, minicamp. But as we sit here right now, I think he's the only one that I think's probably not going to be ready for the start of training camp.
Was
I know-
Ramczyk part of that surgery group, the minor ones?
Yeah, he had a little cleanup in his knee, yeah.
I know there's reasons to take training camp out of town because of construction of the facility and stuff. Is that something you felt this team was ready for? Would you have wanted to do that regardless as a coaching decision?
Yeah. Look, I like training in New Orleans. I like training in the heat. I like being able to have the fans come out to practice. And yet, that heat element is a major factor in terms of, recovery and things of that nature. And so, and I think every now and then it's good to have a change. And so, kind of excited about it. The motivating factor for it really was all the renovations that we've got going on at the facility. But, I kind of like the thought of taking the group, out of town and holding them up in a hotel. And our guys really, developing a bond, during that time.
There's
I
been-
also like the thought of getting out of New Orleans.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that for you.
There's been a lot of talk about culture, buy-in, and stuff, and I know Mickey talked about talking to the players. But what's your role in that, in establishing the culture and establishing the buy-in, like now that you've got the 2 years under your belt? That
Yeah, look,
you feel like you need to do?
Yeah, well, I think it all starts with me, and so, I think setting the mindset for the type of team that we're going to be, having that filtered down through the coaching staff and the veteran players, leaders on our football team, and we've got to make sure that we're holding everybody accountable to the standard that we need to have to have the type of success that we want to have. And look, everybody wants to win, and I think it's my job to teach what it takes to win. And then everybody's got to be held accountable to that standard.
And when you went through the off-season review process, what were some of the things that you checked off, like self-review, like this is something I want to do better in year 3?
Yeah, well, I think that. I think holding everybody accountable to the standard at which we need to be held at, and so and holding the coaches to that standard, and then the coaches holding the players to that standard, and players holding each other to that standard. And like I said, I think that all starts at the top, and that starts with me.
You mentioned at the end of last season that with a playoff appearance, there was the potential that Marshon could have been ready for that game. Did you feel the same about Michael Thomas, or was that injury timeline any different?
Yeah, I think it was probably in a different spot.
How's he doing now, Huff-wise, and kind of where do things stand?
Listen, I mean, where he's at exactly in the process, he's in the recovery process, he's in the rehab process. I can't speak to exactly, where he's at, but I know that the reports I continue to get from the trainers is that, he's making progress.
Did he end up having surgery?
I'll be honest with you, I can't remember. I don't think so, but I don't
That would have been news.
remember.
Why don't we take one or two more?
You mentioned earlier Marshon and right now, just as a coach, what is that process like of figuring out who's on the roster? And specifically with him, like if you guys do decide to move on or trade, like that's a really big decision. What kind of goes into that? Whatever you end up.
Yeah, I mean, I think really it's about, I think it's about guys that we feel like can help us, win football games, guys that we feel like can continue to build the right type of culture here, and guys that are, willing to do the things that it's necessary to do to succeed. And so, look, like I said, I mean, Marshon's part of our football team. He's been a big part of our football team. Unfortunately, the last couple of years, health has been a big factor in that. And so, I think the biggest thing is let's get Marshon healthy and let's see where we're at as a football team, and we'll get the right guys out there that give us a chance to win.
Does health feel like a future concern for him at all? I mean, I know they were really unique injuries.
Yeah, I don't know that those are necessarily predictors of, future, injury issues. And yet, look, I think anytime you have some injuries, those all, factor into any type of decisions that you make. But like I said, look, he's a good football player. He's made a lot of football plays for us. I've been with him for a long time, and I think he is a guy that can help us win.